So having owned a variety of PRS guitars over the years alongside many other guitars by different brands, I thought it'd be interesting to talk about where PRS fit in and who I think they're really for. So I'm going to be leaving some information in the comment section about all the PRSs that I've owned, just in case anyone's interested, prices I paid, what model they were, where I was using them, that kind of thing. I also want to address the SE versus USA models, and specifically actually the SE versus used USA, as that brings the price bracket much closer to each other. I really wanted to talk about which ones I've owned, and also where I found myself using PRS more or less depending on circumstances, like whether I'm playing live, in the studio, how many other guitars I've got at the time, that kind of thing. So I think an interesting way to talk about PRS guitars is like the digital modeler of the guitar world, in that when PRS launched in 1985 with their flagship model, that was the Custom 24, really specs wise it sat straight in between Fender and Gibson, and I'll put some information in the comment sections about how they achieved that. I think in essence it was designed to own one guitar and achieve Fender tones and Gibson tones. Much like if you have a modeler, you can have a whole bunch of different amps in there and it can get very close to many different amps, and I think it's only really when you compare it to the real thing that you would notice a discernible difference. Much like a PRS Custom 24 can sound much like a Strat or a Gibson, and it's only really when you hear a real Strat next to it that you would hear a noticeable difference. Obviously things like the Silver Sky have come along since then, which we'll talk about in a little bit, but really I think that was PRS's main goal at its outset, and still with any of the Custom 24 or 22 models, or really any of the humbucker that go with coil splits, I think that's essentially their goal, is to do that versatility between Gibson and Fender. So that is exactly why I bought my first PRS, and this is my Custom 22, and I bought this when I was 18, and it was my main guitar for about 7 years. I was playing this for 10 hours a day, hundreds of gigs on this, lots of recording sessions, lots of musical theatre shows. It's very dinged up. I'll show some close-ups so you can see the wear on here. But this was my main guitar, as I say, for a very long time. And actually what led me to make this video was that, as sentimentally attached to this guitar as I am, and as much as I've used it, it's not actually one that I pick up very much anymore. And a big reason that I don't use this as much as I used to is that my circumstances have changed. I've got a lot more guitars to choose from now, and also I'm doing much more studio work than live work. So for example, you can change guitar from verse to chorus when you're tracking songs. Obviously live you can't really do that. So the other reason that I'm not using this as much, as I said, I've got a lot of other guitars to choose from, and now that I've got Strats and Tellys and Gibsons, that kind of thing, there's less of an obvious use case for this when I'm recording. There's still times when I'll pick it up, particularly if I need like double tracked rhythm guitars, that kind of thing. But if I need a Strat tone, it makes more sense to pick up the Strat rather than the guitar that can get 95% close to the Strat. I think much like a modeler can achieve Vox tones or Fender tones, Marshall tones, that kind of thing. If you've got the real thing there, it makes sense to go for the real thing. So that's why this guitar isn't seen as much use as it used to. Certainly if I was to do a gig where I was just using one guitar for most of the night, this would probably be the one I'd pick, both for tonal versatility and reliability. In all the gigs and live performances, rehearsals I've done, I've never had an issue with the electronics. I think I maybe touched the truss rod twice, maybe 3 times. It's been refretted, but that's only testament to how much I've actually played it. So now that I'm recording more, I actually find that models like the Vela and the Starla are much more useful, as they offer a much more individual characteristic voice. And I find that when you're recording, if you've got guitars that have individual voices, it makes it much easier to pick which one is the right one depending what tone you're after. So obviously since they launched in 1985, PRS have included a bunch of different other models. We've got things like the Silver Sky if you want Strat tones, you've got the NF3 if you want Telly tones, things like the McCarthy 594 if you're looking for Gibson. Obviously there's hollow bodies. So for example, if you wanted that Strat tone but didn't want it to say Fender on the headstock, I think the Silver Sky is an excellent option. So I actually played an SE Silver Sky at the Birmingham Guitar Show earlier this year, and that guitar was the thing that stood out to me most across the whole show. So that brings us on to the SE versus USA debate. 15 years ago this would have been a completely different discussion, but nowadays, and I think really since 2017 onwards, the SE lineup have really kind of upped their game. Even visually it's hard to tell sometimes between the USA lineup and the SE models. And I think as far as from a gigging musician, or even just getting into building a guitar collection goes, the SE lineup offers far more value for money. And say for the price of one core model, you could pick up a Silver Sky, an NF3, a McCarthy 594 and a DGT, and you're going to get a whole range of tones on a really good set of guitars. You're going to be less worried about them if you're gigging. So I think the SE versus USA debate at this point is essentially how much money you've got to throw at a guitar. I think where this can get more interesting is when you're looking at SEs versus used USA models. And at this point there, I'd be more tempted to go for the used USA model. As I say, I use this guitar more than any other that I've owned, and I've never had any issues with it. I've never touched the electronics. An SE, as good as they are, will inevitably need more maintenance. You might have to check input jacks, electronics, that kind of thing. And that's a general rule of thumb for more budget-friendly guitars versus USA top-tier models, is that the maintenance you'll need to kind of address them with is much more significant. Hopefully that's given some information about PRS as a brand. But if you did have any questions, obviously feel free to drop them in the comments section. If you did enjoy the video, please do click like and subscribe. With that said, I'll see you in the next one. Cheers, guys.